The Week in Review with David Davis. Welcome to another edition of The Week in Review. It's been a pretty busy week, starting with a major set of National Health Service strikes at the beginning of the week, through a government reshuffle to the visit of President Zelenskyy from Ukraine, almost as I speak, just a couple of hours ago. So we're going to cover that, and also some really interesting technology. We will also discuss a couple of interesting, rather ancient technological issues. In one case, ancient DNA and its implications for modern man and immunity, and the other one, the benefits of Roman concrete, believe it or not. The biggest story of the week, though, has been the terrible pictures, terrible news from both Turkey and northwest Syria, where there's been a dreadful earthquake, with the UN forecasting as many as 20,000 deaths. This is a terrible tragedy, but it's a reminder of one of the reasons why, although I'm not a great believer in government aid, I think that we have to keep up our aid expenditure for emergencies like this, which save lives, save children, help reconstruct societies, and basically help our fellow man in the face of terrible and unexpected adversity. With these major strikes going on, a number of the National Health Service unions have claimed that they're not putting lives at risk, they're not threatening lives, and they're doing everything possible to prevent any threat to life. Indeed, some left-wing writers, most notably this week Owen Jones, have made this argument very, very strongly.
These workers are going on strike because they've been forced to. They don't want to go on strike. You don't become a paramedic or a nurse for a laugh. You do it because you want to help people. They've been driven to this point because the National Health Service is on its knees. If the government paid them properly, we would retain more nurses and paramedics, and we would recruit more nurses.
Is that a good argument,
and
Mike?
then people would save lives.
If you pay, if they get...
Now, I'm rather an admirer of Mr. Jones's writing. I read him most of the time, but I think on this occasion he's just got it wrong. The simple truth is, of course, there are backlogs, both from COVID and probably from before, for all sorts of reasons, ranging possibly from funding through to the management of the NHS. But those backlogs are there already, and the deaths from them are happening already. In addition to that, however, when people are unable to get ambulances, when people are unable to get appointments, unable to get tests, unable to get treatment, added deaths will be put into the mix. In other words, you've got the deaths already from COVID, or the delayed effects of COVID. You've now got additional deaths off the back of the strikes. And that's why I, for some time, have thought, I'm a big supporter of union rights. I've rebelled against my government a couple of times in the past on union rights. But in this area, where the union has a monopoly and people are completely dependent on them to save their lives, I think we need to look at other methods of arbitration, binding arbitration probably, arbitration that binds the government as well as the unions. And one way of going down that route is something I've already mentioned in the previous Week in Review, namely the idea of final offer arbitration. Arbitration that encourages reasonable behaviour on both sides, both on the employer and the union side. And I think we should look again at that sometime in the near future. Also this week, Rishi Sunak had a reshuffle of his government, and in doing so he reorganised it to some extent. So you've now got Grant Shapps, who's the head of a new department for energy security and net zero. Now, net zero has been with us for a while, but energy security has become very, very, very important in the light of the post-Ukrainian world. So that's one important and I think sensible reorganisation. You've also got Michelle Donnellan, the Secretary of State for Science and Technology. This is important because we've got to start exploiting our natural advantage of British scientists' genius, really, for invention. And having a department committed to that raises it up the agenda, gives it a champion in cabinet, a champion in government, and drives it forward. Something very good for the growth of the economy and everybody's well-being in the long run. And of course, Kemi Badenoch has now become Secretary of State both for business and trade, and that's a natural link. They should be together. It always used to be the Department of Trade and Industry, the two subjects together, and it's back in a similar mode now, and that I think will help us get the best out of our trade negotiations. On the technology front, one of the things I mentioned last week actually is that a Nobel Prize was given this year for the ability to analyze, so somebody developed the ability to analyze DNA from ancient mankind, early man, from Neanderthals and early Homo sapiens. This is interesting because there's obviously been some crossbreeding between modern humans, Neanderthals, and Denisovans, another type of ancient man, ancient mankind. And what it's shown is that we inherit some things, for example, from Neanderthals: blue eyes, pale skin, red hair, but most importantly, different sorts of immunity. And most of our immune systems are balances between a strength in one area and a weakness in another. And the Nobel Prize winner, Sunday Parvo, who looked at this, has come to the conclusion that nearly 1 million of the deaths from COVID worldwide are largely down to the fact that those people inherited a gene which weakened them in the face of COVID. Now, this is important because we'll start to understand a great deal about who's at risk from future pandemics, how we treat people in terms of medical treatments and so on, what will work with some people and not others. This is all really important stuff, oddly enough, coming out of old bones. Another piece of science, if you like, of ancient history that's become really interesting is some study of Roman concrete. Now, why would that be important? Well, if you think about it, for a start, it's the only concrete that's been tested for 2,000 years. And we know it works over very long periods of time. But what the researchers have discovered is that Roman concrete is both stronger and more durable than modern concrete. Indeed, it is in a way self-healing. It sort of fills in its own cracks. And this means that it can be used for much longer than modern styles of concrete, which means the Romans could teach us something in terms of building, teach us how to use more efficient, more long life concrete, which would use up fewer resources. So who knows? Ancient Rome may yet help us save the planet. Now, the latest thing that's happened as we're shooting this week, it was a surprise on Wednesday, a closely held secret for security reasons, was the visit of President Zelenskyy of Ukraine, who came and addressed Houses of Parliament and met the Prime Minister. He made an interesting speech. I certainly couldn't make a speech like that in Ukrainian. He's making it in English. It was clever. It was quite funny. It was quite emotional in many ways. And it really made us feel that we're doing the right thing in supporting Ukraine against the monstrous invasions of Vladimir Putin's Russia. So it was history in action in Parliament this week.
Years ago, I thanked you for delicious English tea. And I will be leaving the Parliament today, thanking all of you in advance for powerful English planes.
Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it again. If you did, like, subscribe, all the usual things. We're going into recess, a parliamentary recess, so we won't have a parliamentary subject to talk about next week. So we'll see you in 2 weeks' time.